children's theater production where every single child at audition gets a part. And what it brings them over the years in their confidence and appreciation of the arts. Come on up and I'll find you a great place to stay and take you out.
Thank you very much. And
I'm Ann Katz, I'm Director of Creative Wisconsin, the state's community cultural development organization.
thank you.
Hi, my name is Alexis Arnold, and I am the president of Art Connected. We're located in downtown Whittier, Wisconsin. I am also a working artist in photography and in cosmetics.
Thank you to the Wisconsin Arts Board for allowing us to join in. I'm Holly Feldman from Northern Sky Theater. I'm the Associate Managing Director, that's up in Door County. I am Sarah Young, and Managing Director of American Players Theater in Spring Green.
Thanks for coming.
And we're thrilled. Both Holly and Sarah have stepped into new roles. I know we took a tour of Door County and Holly is now in the transition into the managing director role. And Sarah has been, or both of you guys have been staples at this conference for so long. But Sarah, Director of Communications for how many years? 20 is now stepped into the role of managing director and could be in a better place for her. So it's nice to see theater represented in the audience as well. So thank you guys very much for attending. All right, we will move into the approval of the agenda that was sent out. Are there any changes or corrections? If not, we can approve this by acclamation. All right. So move by acclamation and approval of the minutes from the December 2nd meeting. And thank you very much for upholding the minutes. So thank you for that. Matt, that was not a slide. I just got an eye left from it. Our former secretary. So thank you, Denora, for that.
Yes, sorry. I don't know how deeply you want the typos or the edits of this to go, but I saw on under visual that the Museum of Wisconsin Arts is written as the Museum of Wisconsin Arts. But again, I don't know how detailed you want.
No, is it one under what bullet point?
Under E.
Under what number?
E2. This is as I was reading, but again, I don't know how detailed you want to be.
Are you seeing this in the minutes?
I'm actually the only thing on these seven.
Okay, Karen, are you seeing this? Do you have the minutes pulled up? Because come and show me.
We'll fix the Museum of Wisconsin Arts, promise.
It was just again. Thing, but no.
Okay, so it's under. Right, we have to get to the number. It's under 6. Okay, 6E2. We will make that. Any other changes, corrections? Hearing none, is there a motion to approve the minutes of our December meeting with that edit?
Hoffman, so moved.
Thank you. Ann. Is there a second?
Johnson.
Thank you. John, any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Second, Jane, are you able to hear first and second, or would you like that to be repeated?
I have that. Thank you.
Thank you, Jane. Wonderful. Well, we will move on to the budget committee update and pass the ball over to John Potter.
Thanks,
What's
Brian.
going on?
I'm going to pass it over to George. Is it fair to say that many things are pending at this point?
Very good,
And
yes.
I will let George, if he's so good, to report on the details.
So let's first deal with what's not pending and look at the budget sheets that were in your notes. You know, and I'm gonna look here for a second. It would be good for our friends to be able to see it while we're talking about it as well.
Thank you.
George is working on sharing on the screen through Zoom. And for those in the room who do not have notes, just so that he can share the screen.
Okay. We'll try to grow it up a little bit.
Thank you, George.
Okay, so for those of you who always get this information from us that says, we don't have our match, we don't have our match. This is a page that describes what we're talking about when we say we don't have our match for the NEA. under chapter 20, which is the statutory language that says how much money the Arts Board receives in its budget, you see that the amount total is $889,600. Now, that's all the state money that we have. And then we have two other categories. One of them is the Art and Craft Fair Directory listings. That's actually not something that we do anymore. We haven't done since 2012 because we went from a staff of 10 to a staff of 4. And tourism picked that publication up for a couple of years, and then they didn't do it anymore because they couldn't keep up with it with the staff that they have. So, but that amount stays in our legislation. So in our chapter 20, and in that part of the statute, it still says we have the authority to have $20,000 for the Art and Craft Fair Directory. We keep trying to give it back to DOA when they try to cut our budget, and they never take it. I don't understand why. And the Woodland Indian Arts Initiative comes from gaming dollars, so it's program revenue versus general purpose revenue. So the GPR versus the PR, as you see in the abbreviations. So if you look at the total state funding, chapter 20, 934,500. If you take out the 20,000, because it's not real money, and then the estimated shortfall between what we say we have and what the state is, the feds are giving us, that green number, $148,100, is the amount that's different. So when we say we need to have a chapter 1310 meeting with the joint finance, it's that 148.1 that we're trying to get from them, so that we can meet the match and draw down all of the money that we have been awarded by the National Endowment for the Arts. Now, at the bottom of this page, just as again, more education, if you look at the notes from chapter 20, the state of Wisconsin uses numbers that have nothing to do with reality when it's making our budget, when they include the federal dollars. So you'll see the federal dollars the state has in the biennial budget is 778,000 compared to the actual 954 that we received, right? So they're using a number just to balance the entire billions and billions of dollars budget overall. So again, that's not a number that makes any sense for us. We still have to wait for that 148,100, and that's what the holding position now. We understand joint finance has met in January, and we haven't submitted yet. They met in February, but it was only a meeting for the Department of Justice. So we're hoping that in the next meeting that they have, they'll take this up. So that gives you the sense of where the money is or where it should be. And if we scroll down, this will be harder yet to see. This is how, for those of you who are not here often, this is the grants and aid budget for the Arts Board. So you'll see the programs that the Arts Board has in general on the state side, what the state is putting into these grant programs, and then what the federal government through the National Endowment is putting into the program. The only thing to point out here is that the regranting program is one of our statutory programs, which means it appears actually in state statute that we have this program called regrant. All of our other programs come under state aid for the arts, which the Arts Board controls and sets up the programming as it seems fit. This is just a breakdown year to date, and for the Arts Board members, I'm going to try and fall off the screen, right? But we can kind of move back and forth. So this is a repeat of the thing you saw before, which shows the year to date. So what you see is in the Arts Talent Initiative, we spent 32,000 to date. In the creative communities, we spent this amount. As of this printing, we had not spent the money for Arts Midwest. This is our Arts Midwest news. And you will be approving at this meeting the Wisconsin Regranting Program recommendation. In the federal grant side, the thing that I want you to see is that we have been spending up the federal side. And the most important thing you see highlighted here is the creation and presentation grant program. This is a significant increase to creation and presentation. And what we've been holding back from is the fact that if we don't have the 1310, we can't tell people they're going to get an increase, because we could say, here's your increase, and then turn back to us and say, thank you. And we'll say, oh, by the way, we didn't get the 1310, so we have to ask for that money back. We never want to be in that position, which again is why we're waiting for. In the next category, and this will be interesting to everybody, this is our operation budget. And what you're going to see here is that the state actually pays for 3 staff people. And at this point, DOA overhead. Right? That's all the state pays for on the operational side of the arts board budget. There was a time when there was travel money for the director to go to DC for the National Arts Action Summit. They're not doing that in person, and so therefore those dollars are no longer budgeted. On the federal side, you'll see that it pays for 1 staff person and basically everything else we do. So our ability to travel across the state, our ability to answer the phone, our ability to have computers that work not only for communication, but also for the grants process, all of that is supported by the National Endowment for the Arts. It's very upside down in the sense that you wonder how we are a state agency, you know, with the dollars that come from the state on the operational side. But the magic of all this is that this is an art board staff that is very frugal, and as the board has directed, wants to return as much of the dollars to the grantees as possible. The only other thing in the 2023 budget is Poetry Out Loud. And you'll see, if you read your board book, that a couple of weeks ago, the Poetry Out Loud winner was selected. And that means we're going to start to see the actual expenses for Poetry Out Loud. For those who haven't heard of it before, Poetry Out Loud is a program of the Poetry Foundation and the National Endowment for the Arts. It's kind of like the spelling bee for poetry. Students learn poems and recite them. So it's not a poetry slam, though they have added a self-generated poetry wing of Poetry Out Loud. But it started specifically as a recitation competition. So what that means is our winner will now go to DC and compete on the national level, and we'll see how she does. But as I say, as far as the budget is concerned, we'll start to see the expenses from the competition, which took place in March. So you'll see that at the May meeting. Any questions about fiscal 23, the budget year to date? Okay. Very good. Show up my screen here. Next one,
Fiscal year 22 update.
fiscal year 22 updates, because of the 1310 and the way it has lagged, we find ourselves with some dollars at the end of fiscal 22. DOA is trying to both total up what that amount is, and then to decide what of fiscal 23's expenses can be paid for that 22. Why are we talking about this? Because in June, we learned we have to do our final report to the NEA. So this is the moment where we're trying to reconcile all of the dollars that have come our way. Why it's so late this time around is because of the ARPA money that we received. So you had all that rescue plan money, and so they've given both a blessing and a curse in extending the deadline, which means the deadlines are starting to stack up one on top of another. But as I say, DOA is working to figure out what that amount is, what will be transferred. What that means for the good is there will be money in 2023 that we can use hopefully towards the 50th anniversary. So stay tuned on that.
And then it's fiscal year 22, 25 biennial budget.
So the biennial budget. Okay. So I like the secretary's language. If you are supportive of this, talk to your elected officials. She said that over and over yesterday. That's beautiful. The $100 million is to the Wisconsin Artistic Endowment Foundation. A foundation that has been on the state books since 2002. But has been dormant. Because when it was originally brought in, we'll do the short version of this, but when it was originally created, its funding source was to be tax credits, 100% tax credit. That way, if you gave money to the foundation, you'd have that same amount that you could still give to your local arts organization. So that the foundation on the state level wasn't robbing the local. Well, the challenge was that the governor and the legislature at the time said, yeah, 100% tax credit, that's too much. So let's make it 25%. And the governor at the time was Scott McCallum, said, why should the arts get this benefit when Boys and Girls Clubs and Salvation Army don't get the same benefit, 5%? Well, the minute they cut it all the way back to 5%, there's no money to fund the endowment. So when the governor was looking for a place to spend the surplus dollars this time around, his staff identified the Wisconsin Artistic Endowment Foundation as the place to put those dollars. The good news is the Wisconsin Artistic Endowment Foundation was created so that half of any monies that was thrown off by the foundation would go to the arts board automatically. The other half would be controlled by the 14-member board that would be appointed to this new foundation, which would include governor's appointees, a legislator from each house and each party, so 4 legislators, the chair of the arts board, and the executive director of the arts board as ex officio, non-voting. The fact is that the arts board gets the opportunity to operate the new foundation. The challenge will be in the details because when it was first created, there was no additional administrative money to operate the brand new 13-member board. So the challenge will be going ahead if this goes in place, where the resources come from. But the language says 2 things really interesting about the foundation. One of them is that the programs created by the foundation will be in the same as the arts board programs, in the sense that that's how they'll be developed and they'll be administered by the arts board. So when people have asked, since this came into place, well, where's that money going to go? Of course, it's a perfectly legitimate question. The answer is, yeah, we don't know that yet, because the arts board's process is to go out to the field and say, hey, field, what do you think is the challenge? What's the opportunity? What kind of program do you think we need to have out there that will be supportive of what we do? So the most important thing people need to understand is the foundation will not come into being with a mandate to do X. That's not what it's doing. It's going to come into being, try to get its sea legs, and then
it's a period of time, once it does come, once, let's say money is transferred in, it's still the time, like an endowment before the percent can be, so what their budget's even gonna be at that time will remain unknown. So there is just gonna be that tenuous period of time, should this move forward, and fingers crossed.
right. And so that's the first piece. And the second piece is there's a maintenance of effort piece of that creation of the foundation that says, if the arts board's GPR is cut, no dollars. In other words, you can't cut the arts board and say, well, we're just going to give them money from the foundation. The state has to maintain its support of the arts board. Let's say it could even increase it, but it can't backstep it. And that was really, by the way, for those who created this thing. We'll take a step back in a minute to talk about what's going on and try to support this moving forward. But the other part of the governor's budget is an amount to match the NEA. So whether this other piece happens or not, there's a piece of the budget that says match the NEA, and the total number is $552,000. So that we don't have to keep doing the 1310 thing. Rather, will be in a match situation with the NEA. I can only tell you that we've received a call from the NEA, it's not official yet. Probably soon it will be. That from 954.5, I think we say it there, it's gonna move to 1,044,000.
Which is great news.
Excellent news, but it means our legislature will be challenged to keep stepping up and matching where the NEA is going. And that doesn't even begin to say what President Biden said the other day, moving, I think they're at 207, and moving it up from there, his budget, moving the NEA up from there to 211, I think. And remember, anything that NEA gets, 40% of that goes to the state agency. To distribute to the state agencies.
And I think that's an important thing that you just said, because I was just in a listening session. And I could talk more under external relations, but I don't think even our state legislators understand how the NEA money coming, like how this is all happening. I think they just see it as a pass through and don't really understand that the NEA isn't just cherry picking certain things when it comes to this.
Right, and so the increase on their end is wonderful, but on our end, we say it's an acknowledgement of the good works of the arts, Fund, right? They wouldn't keep throwing money down a bad hole, but they keep increasing those dollars. And so that's wonderful, and I like your thoughts, so let's talk about the advocacy behind all this when we get to external information. Perfect. I think that's
quick budget view question. So the budget language for the annual state funding for the arts board, is it being written so it's sum sufficient? So annually, there'll be sum sufficient equal to what the NEA grant is?
We suggested that to do it, but the way it was written was specific amounts.
Right, which is problematic because it still keeps you in a 1310 situation.
Right, exactly.
And our friends, unfortunately, in joint finance are not always willing to write a blank check. So.
And with the foundation, is it written that there be stat language as to how much, what percentage could be withdrawn every year? Is it like 5% like most foundations do?
So it's silent on that at this point. The state of Wisconsin Investment Board is the one that is going to be responsible for investing the dollars. And so there will also be that moment we're going to have to create the bylaws and the articles of incorporation because it's quasi-governmental. It's not necessarily part of government, which is really important. Because other states that have grown endowments, the legislators, when they say, oh my God, we're running a deficit. Look, there's money over there, let's try to grab that. So the fact that it would sit outside of government would really be important. But to be continued.
So before we leave the $100 million.
I'm gonna ask you just to use your theater voice, project just for the meeting.
Yeah, I just wanted to take a moment and say, we have a seated governor who actually said the words $100 million for the arts. I've been working in state government, not as long as George, but for over 25 years. And that is the first time anything like that at that level happened. So I was just thinking it'd be nice to take a moment and just bask in that reality of how amazing that is.
And Karen, he apologized. We had, for those of you who were not with us earlier, we had a photo taken with the governor. He apologized. It was only 100 million.
Yeah.
And I just said, don't diminish what you've done because it is a far cry larger than anyone before you is done. So.
That's right.
All right, any questions for John or George? John, I got some.
I think the one thing we'll say is, the budget committee is going to need to meet in the coming weeks. So we'll put our calendars together and then we'll reach out to the rest of the committee. So we can do that.
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting time, I think, from an entire committee structure standpoint, because we're in such flux with the biennium budget and some of the things that have been put forward and just having elections and changes. So, all right, we'll move on to Karen. And before I let Karen do that, she did send us all an email. Raphael, you did amazing. Thank you.
Welcome, your standards are what I will.
You know what? I wouldn't say low. It's been very scrappy. I would say we know how to make do with not so much money, which
Yeah.
I think you did a beautiful job in and taking the words of our strategic plan and making it visually appealing and more readable. You gave it a good book cover. How about that?
Thanks, Frank.
No, it's wonderful. Thank you.
No, it was, I sent it to you, we're just gonna put it up so everybody can see it.
Just this morning, right?
Yeah, just this morning.
No,
Come for me.
it's here. Searching on Karen here.
Okay.
So which one, Karen, the first one?
Yep.
858.
Oh, I don't,
Put it up. Nope, just, nope.
I have 718, Brian said 1058. 718.
Did you change it, Karen?
No.
All right,
I
then.
can resend it.
I don't have either one.
Yeah.
The colors are weird on the screen, I will say that, but, the gold looks, as Susan pointed out in another meeting, not so gold, but whatever. You get the sense of the imagery. So this is the, Mary, this is it.
Is this being shared?
I love it, Raphael. You are a genius.
I've not heard that all day.
Mary,
He'll accept it.
Mary, I wasn't sure that you could be on Zoom, and I apologize for that. So, your name should be on this. If you wanna do a report out for the amazing work that you've shepherded the strategic planning committee through. This is the sort of culmination of that. Just wanted to share it with you and, yeah.
Karen, I defer to you. I mean, you have put all the great work from the strategic planning committee into words, into prose, great organization. And now Raphael has made it beautiful. I think it needs a little bit of formatting. But I'm very happy with how it turned out.
Awesome. All righty. So we will alert the people whose photos are in it, that their photos are in it, as we share the final version of it with them and put it on our website and all of the world. So, okay. So that's the strategic planning committee note that I had.
We need to change those subtitles, not photo credits.
Yeah.
Yeah, but no, thank you so much, Raphael. You did such great work with this. This is nothing, the look of it is what's new to you all. You've seen the plan, we've approved this plan. It's just making it, obviously giving it some street cred when we do put it on the website or when people ask for it, that it actually feels like something someone can look through versus a task list for us as a board as we move through the biennium. So, any questions? Thank you again, Mary, for leading such a great session and getting us to this piece. The next
My
one is
pleasure, and thanks to the committee.
Our next is External Relations Committee, and I feel like every time that I give this report, I kind of say the same things because there's been so much change constantly happening. We were hoping once the elections were over, we'd be able to then begin to go in and start doing the evangelizing that needs to be done. And then our governor put out the budget, which then created a little bit of shift in what our messaging is, because I didn't, it was the day before the announcement that George got the call as to this is what you are going to see, correct?
The day of, actually.
Okay, the day of. So it doesn't give you much time. So the External Relations Committee right now, and this entire board and anyone in this room, if you have not already sent a thank you card letter to the governor to at least just acknowledge what was put in the budget, I encourage you wholeheartedly. It's never going to be too late to do it. I think one of the most critical things in my head about this, I'm cut and dry when it comes to things that there's no point talking about failure right now. We need to celebrate the success of what was just put into this budget. And we have to believe what was put into that budget is possible. If we don't believe what was put into that budget is possible, then no one is going to believe us. And the arts are worse than tourism when it comes to actually getting out there and really standing up for things, because we're so used to being the kids who get, the money cut all the time. We're not playing that game right now. we're playing the game of the governor put in $1 million to this endowment. The governor also put in the budget to make us whole, as whole as whole can be right now until we truly understand what's going on at the NEA. And we may be in a 10-13-10 situation, but that 13-10 situation isn't going to hold grants up for 6, 7, 8 months from when they should have been paid out. So whomever you're speaking to right now, if you're having listening sessions in your community, I encourage you to just sit there and then make sure your representative and say, you know, I just want to say, I hope we can count on your support for what the governor has put forward within the budget. We all know that it's going to go in front of the committee on joint finance, and there's going to be changes. This happens every single time, and guess what? We will deal with that when that happens. But right now, we're living in a world where we need to celebrate what's happened and to start crafting messages with that in mind. So it begins with gratitude. It begins with sharing with your state legislators how important what was put into that budget for the arts and what it is going to mean to your community. When I spoke about Door County, I spoke about the 60+ % decline in CNP grants that came to Door County from when the cuts were made. And how did that impact Door County itself? It went to private individuals who had to make this up. And that was a huge cut for just one of 72 counties. So I think we all have messaging that we can talk to our legislators about. If you don't know who they are, or have just not been put in a situation where you need to address this, I'm happy to talk to you. George is happy to talk to you. Karen's happy to talk to you, and Katz is in the room as well with Create Wisconsin. But there is right now. I will come for you if you look at this negatively or put any negative spin on this right now. It is a positive truth. This is a new level. It's one of those that I want to celebrate. Celebrate this historic moment. Let's celebrate it and don't let anyone take the wind out.
And when you come for people, you will point them to the website.
Absolutely.
What you get. And it
Absolutely.
has all kinds of awesome links. It's on our homepage, board members, yes, on our homepage.
Yes.
So, yes.
We've got a lot of work from an external relations standpoint coming up. And just because there are a few of us who serve on the external relations committee, we're all members by appointment to this board. You are all members of the external relations committee, and anyone who receives funding from the Wisconsin Arts Board, once again, is a member of the external relations committee at further reach, because there's no way we can do this without our grass tops being invested in understanding what's going on and the economic impact we make in our communities and what it means to major corporations for being able to hire within their communities and get people to actually choose the city. Our legislators are speaking about the loss, the brain drain of our younger generation going away, but we're not seeing the investment being put in what will potentially keep them here, the arts being one of them. So I'll get off my soapbox, but it's one of those to where I think right now we're in a period prior to the Committee on Joint Finance doing what they're going to do. At that point, we will regroup and we will have our marching orders is what we do. But we're all served as appointed members by the governor, and our governor has put forward incredible arts.
I think that's important. A couple of things to add on to what Brian just said. First, Gerard, who could not be with us, his health is really a challenge right now. And so he wasn't able to be with us, but he happened to be in Madison this week and we had a chance to have lunch together. And he gave some advice as to which legislators we need to talk to, what the timing is, who might be good people to talk with those legislators, et cetera. So we're thankful to him for bringing that forward. And I will point out that Create Wisconsin is leading the way with a group of organizations that include UPAP and Milwaukee Rep to talk about this notion of the grass tops and how do they get organized to support what the governor is trying to do. So We appreciate the work that's being done on behalf of all of the arts organizations in the state. I am participating, but there will be a point at which people get so close to advocacy that I'm gonna have to step back.
And I'm being CC'd on things now, and I have to watch what I can do as an employed person as well.
So,
Can you talk a little bit about where that line is?
yeah, so, I think when we're speaking on behalf of the Arts Board and we're talking about how it will affect us and our constituents, I think we're good. When we get close to deciding who's gonna speak to whom at what time and how that all gets done, there will be a moment where we can't be part of that because the messaging will be stronger than we could say as an executive branch agency. And so we need to keep that wall where it says they're on it, they've got what they can say, we can't go there. Because we need to be able to turn to the legislature and say, we're speaking on behalf of the Arts Board and not look like we've now puppeteered behind us an army of people. And so that's why I say there will be, and it's not a bright line,
No, I get that.
but we will get to it. And as I say, we can't be in that position of.
Let me ask you this,
organizing.
just building on what you were saying about
Yeah.
thinking positively. I can write the governor and say, thank you very much, John, I appreciate that. I can write that and say, hey, John, I can talk to Katrina Shankford.
Yeah.
I can do that. Can I ask other arts organizations that I volunteer for, sit on a board of, whatever like that? Can I say, hey, here's the list of joint
Yes.
finance committee
Yes.
members, here's the link to our page.
Yes,
If you feel so moved, right? So I can
Absolutely make
over
it
that, right?
absolutely.
Mhm.
I've had members, I've reached out to my board of directors and
Yep.
as players and gave them all the governor's address and I said, I expect every single one of you to send a thank you.
I think ultimately the answer there is, while this money will come through us,
Mhm.
it is not for us.
Mhm.
It's for the field, and just adding that on into the universe that says, it's not gonna sit with us, it's going to go out and help the field, so if the field is waiting for us to do that, we're gonna do work toward it.
Mhm.
But if we do it alone, it fails,
Mhm.
we can't do it alone. And we don't have the relation, you just named a series of legislators you have relationships with. We don't have relationships with all of them, the only way we'll get to those kind of relationships is encourage.
Well, they don't know me, I just sent them an email.
No, but I'm just saying. But you're.
But that's the thing.
You're in their area, and so they're gonna listen to you in a different way than if the hired gun from the arts board says, hey, you ought to do this thing, they're gonna go, yeah, whatever. But you say it, and now all of a
Yeah.
sudden.
And I don't necessarily sign that Karen Ann Hoffman, Wisconsin Arts. Remember, I signed out Karen Ann Hoffman, you're city.
Right, and that's how you should.
I mean, so I'm just looking for what can I do?
Yeah, so I just wanted to add on that point that there aren't rules, right?
Understood, and that's where
There
the
are no,
energy comes.
we don't have ethics rules that prohibit us from doing any sort of advocacy. It's a decision.
Mhm.
And to the extent, I just would recommend everyone not worry about crossing the line and pissing somebody off. If there is, I think as long as we're strategically, we're aligned and we all agree on what the outcome is that we're seeking, I wouldn't worry whether or not I step one or two steps over that line in advocacy. There are worse things to do. And, right? I just, the only other thing I wanted to add real quickly on this point is that unlike bills that have been proposed in the past that require new money, we have a surplus, which makes this a lot different. And so how it's going to work is that the governor and the legislature are going to negotiate. There will be a budget at some point, hopefully in July, but we'll see. And so there will be priorities on each side, and each side wants things out of this money. And so when we say email the governor, sort of on these other things that have come up as thank yous, I just want to iterate that that's really important here. Especially if you know any staff in the governor's office. I've emailed staff that I know, and I know not all of us do. But just having everyone reach out to the governor's office, because then it just elevates it on the priority list of, the governor has to make hard choices. I mean, there's lots of money for education. There's lots of money for mental health. And so the arts are just one of many things. And I think we just want to be sure that they are hearing that message from us, that this is important.
And I would just jump off that same topic for a second. When you're being asked, I mean, there is a huge budget surplus and this whole concept of, you know, this money, this 100 million is one time. This is not something that our state government in future biennium budgets needs to invest in. But they sure, but right now this is a one time because of the budget surplus. That really kind of made our local representative for Dorrington County stop and he said, okay, it's a one time. That changes their thought process. So keep that in mind as you're talking, that this isn't something, we're not asking for new money that needs to then be allocated every biennium. This 100 million, it's a one time right now from the surplus.
The other
And it
thing,
makes it more palatable.
sorry about that, I'm just gonna step on your tongue there and say that the other thing that I think might be true is we know as much or more about this as some of our representatives do. So when we say this is a one-time investment, it's gonna make a difference in our community. Thank you, I'm your constituent, please support this. I think that can be no use to some of those schools.
I think it is, and I think the other part that we're not talking about right now is I think the 100 million is the shiny bright object that's out there.
Yeah.
But it's the part that's making us whole with the 1310, because I think the progress we made in the last 1310, where some larger arts organizations actually were at the point of saying, we will be sending emails to every single ticket buyer. And we will be naming names as to who is blocking funding for the arts in the state of Wisconsin. It made a way.
That could be advocacy with the capital A though, right?
They were not members of the Wisconsin Arts
Right,
Board
right,
who were doing this, but I'm just saying that there is the line
Yeah.
of understanding. But it's also, I don't think they would want us continually coming back from the 1310. I know what you're saying, I know, but if we could get this, it's a far smaller ask, and our asks have only grown, and they will, as the NEA, even in the prior administration at the federal level, it may not have been advocated at the executive level, but so the legislature, it kept going up and up, and I think you're going to see that continually happening, and what that means is we're gonna fall further and further behind. And every time we go to a 1310, we have more and more money, at which point it's going to start becoming slower and slower, because it's going to be a bigger and bigger dollar amount. So as we start getting these right sizing within the budget, even though it may not be perfect, it minimizes the 1310 we're going for, and it makes it easier to put on an agenda and just get it through without holding it back.
Just on that point, are we sure that it minimizes the 1310 issue? Would this be considered matching? These be considered matching funds if we were getting it through?
For 23,
The 552.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's absolutely.
Yes, okay. But in going forward with the endowment funds, would the NEA consider those?
Yeah, we're gonna have to check on that. Like, I don't think they will want to have that as match because it's so easily taken away. So we'll find out. We'll give you an answer in that.
Okay.
So the 552 is over 2 years. And is this a one-time thing, or is this something that we're also gonna try and see if, to ask for support? How is this? I understand how to talk about the 100 million. I want to understand how to talk about that.
So sure, so the 552 is one time over the biennium. We would love to capture that for our base going forward, so we can build upon that. I don't know that that's the way it will come into our budget, but at least for the moment, it would take care of both years of that biennium and make us close to full, if not completely full.
Okay.
The only thing that I gave Brian a look about what wouldn't they want to do this. Joint finances mindset, because they could have fixed this year's without a 1310 by taking it out when they took up the last one. Because legislative fiscal bureau says, okay, do this in fiscal 22 and then do this in fiscal 23. joint finance tends to think, well, let's just see what happens down the road. We don't want to write you a check now for 23. We want to see what that's going to look like before we write, because we might write you a smaller check because other monies might come in, whatever. So that's why when John asked about the self-sufficient question, that's the other part of the way they think. They're like, I don't know what that number is, so I'm not sure I want to give you something that's like a blank check. You fill in the number here. They're more likely to say, if you come back, let's talk about this again. So that we can give you the number you need, but not another penny more.
Well, fair enough.
But we do need for that number to increase if the MEA funds are increasing.
Yes, it does, yes, you've asked the right question, and yes, it does need to increase every biennial budget. It must increase, and that is the advocacy that everyone in the arts and everyone who supports the arts needs to be doing on a regular basis, is talking about the economic investment in the arts. And none of us want to talk about what's the ROI of investing in the arts, because that's not what the arts exists for, is about economic engine. We know we're an economic engine, but when you look at arts in its years form, the last thing you want to talk about is the financial side of it. But that is what moves the needle. And we know that if you invest $1 in the arts, $7 can return to your community for that. So it's a pretty darn good investment. And similar to investing in tourism, we return money to the community and to the state's coffers by these investments.
And just one other point. You said, we talk about the 552 now. In the last biennium, the governor included money to make the match the 1310. Joint finance took it out, and it was gone. And so with advocacy support this will maybe it sticks around this time, or maybe with your help and others' help, making them understand that we're going to be back at this again. You know, this is not like, don't do this, and the arts aren't going to come again and say, please, we need to make this match. So if we can, in our advocacy, say, this is the most efficient way to do this now, because what you're doing to a staff of 4 is you're making it impossible to meet the grant deadline that we had. So a creation and presentation board winner would be used to receiving a grant late December, early January, after your December meeting where you approved the grant. Last year, it went all the way until October, and almost to the time where they had to apply. So there's nothing efficient about that at all. And so, you know, as they say they want efficient government, that's another thing to say. Hey, there's nothing efficient.
We have like this is talking points, because we, if you go to other people and say, contact your legislature. I had 25 artists who are in our Mark district and opening the other night, and I handed out the sheets that said we're 50th in the nation. And you should just see the look at everyone's face. So we got a couple of messages here.
We do. We have a lot of talking points that could be put into a press kit or an advocacy kit that could be downloaded on the website. I mean, this is very straightforward, and I think it's a low-hanging piece that we should jump on to get more people on board and to get us all in an aligned message. The NEA has an advocacy webinar coming up that we could learn from.
I think we can't be asking people who are not super in depth into the arts to come up with all kinds of talking points. I think we have to help them with that. And also, since we kind of have 3 different messages here, give her the 1310, stop being the last in the nation of public arts funding, and give us $100 million from the endowment. That's why we wrap those all in one message. Because one of them do they get separated? Like, how do we need to communicate this? And what do we give to our people who help advocate, who aren't as, involved in the arts as we all?
I think that's going to come, Bill and Mary. I just want to touch on that. We need to be taught. There are certain things we have put on our website, but what we put from an advocacy standpoint on our website, that's why Create Wisconsin exists. And we need to be very cognizant of what we're putting on a state website. But there are ways to educate folks, and there's ways to merge these things in. And I know that Anne is working on items, these talking points, and with UPAP and Imagine Milwaukee and with Milwaukee Rep and with George, and I've been on those now. So there are people who are looking at this from a legislative standpoint of what do these points need to be when it comes to the budget items that have been put in the biennium budget, but then there are talking points that sit outside of it, such as the 50th in the nation. These are the things that we need to talk about. Yes, those are things that once we figure out what happens at the Committee of Joint Finance and we start putting things together, it's going to be a train the trainer sort of thing so that we can get people out. And that's where we look to our partner organization at Great Wisconsin to hear what's going on in this room and to hear what's going on in the communities of Wisconsin so that they understand what needs to be, what do we need to be bringing the bell about collectively. So I think that's why it's important that we all understand that there are two organizations here, one that has got some limitations as to what we could do, one that doesn't have limitations, but has their own mission as well as Great Wisconsin. So it's trying to find in a Venn diagram, what is the overlying art of that, to where we can come together and make sure that we're achieving goals that meets what Great Wisconsin's mission is and what our mission is, and making sure that we explain to people where we sit in the United States, that the closest state to us in the Midwest is Iowa, who invests over twice as much GPR funding into the arts. I mean, there's a story here, and we're working on that.
So, but to go back to your point about talking points for us right now, it's $100 million. It's the $552,000. Those are the things we have to keep our eyes on. The rest of it is supportive of those two, right? But it's supportive of. And tomorrow we'll get another set of documents because the NEA and the Bureau of Economic Analysis are coming out with those numbers. And so we'll see where those numbers move. They were 10.9 at the beginning before COVID. They were 9.6 after COVID. There may be even a little bit further down this year. We don't know. But those numbers will come out tomorrow and they'll be helping us to explain this. And I'll just point out that we're also in the midst of the Arts and Economic Prosperity 6, which will be extremely important to continuing the ability to tell the story about the power of the arts.
And results in November from AEP6, which is Americans for the Arts and Economic Prosperity Study. I know we've done a lot, sorry, but I think that's been the longest external relations committee report we've needed in a while, but it's like a stage on the agenda.
Just want to recap. We suggest to people that we're contacting to use the advocacy kit that maybe somebody like Craig Wisconsin is doing. Or because I'm just hearing that we're not going to have something on our site exactly that's useful to.
We already have some.
But it has certain limitations, right? Or not?
At this point, what people can say is to their legislators, I understand the governor put $100 million in the budget. We would like you and your colleagues to support this for me. That's what they can do if they need all of the background stuff, like where we've been, et cetera. Ours is kind of got this. But for the purest thing that we have right now is $100 million. It's on our website. It tells people how to go and talk to their legislators.
But this is what us in Wisconsin Arts Board, this is our mission right now, is the governor put a budget out with these 2 points in it. That's our talking point right now. We will have an external relations committee so that we can get bigger talking points that talk about 50th of the nation, but those are things that those become talking points of supporting. Should the Committee on Joint Finance strip this out, why it needs to go back in, and therefore they become the talking points that we can then use to communicate, and then Denora, we can create that to help, and we'll be working on it from Great Wisconsin as well. And George and Ann communicate regularly. So, and I'm just gonna say, if we're probably gonna get some interruptions, and it's second switch right now, and there is a second posted in this room. It's A3, so if seeing anyone coming in, just A3. It's just wondering that.
A3.
Exactly. Any more questions, John?
Yeah, I just wanted to express what I think we could do is simply an informational one pager that talks about the state of the arts, including the 50th ranking, including the economic impact of the arts and spending on the arts in Wisconsin, jobs, whatever we have there. It's simple. The middle part is the opportunity we have right now with the governor's budget, and the last part is you could say where the process is. It's in the legislature.
John, if you're not on the committee, you're on the committee now, and we'll make sure that you get the.
I like where your mind thinks.
Exactly,
So,
so,
and her folks can work off of that.
exactly. Okay, try to keep us on our agenda. We're running about 10 minutes behind. So let's move forward. And are there any more questions, external relations? Thank you very much for the great dialogue on it and understanding that we're in somewhat of a holding pattern, and let's hold our heads high in this holding pattern. Lynn, do you want to give your report on the 50th anniversary?
So we're going from a very serious and important subject. Let's party now. That's what our little group is about, our 50th anniversary and how we're gonna party. So the first thing we did, and George, are you gonna bring those up for them to
Sure, if
see?
you'd like.
So we have decided, the group has decided on a, logo for the 50th. And there are 3 different color choices. And so the decision was to use those 3 different choices in various applications that will be put into the, the toolkits as we go forward. So here's one in gold. This gold is not shown,
This is the black and white. We
that's
start
the
with-
black and white one.
You wanna go bigger?
No, whatever.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate the reminder. You appreciate the reminder. There you
Okay, so everybody's seeing that. So that's the first one, just in basic black and white. The second is in our normal colors. Not letting you.
It's just 2 of ours.
go. It's underneath here.
He couldn't tap.
You click that. All right.
Here we go.
And this is the third one. This gold is not the exact gold. It will be a truer gold than what you see on the screen here. And so these are going to be used in different applications. So that has been decided on. And then Susan Lipp is going to take care of the major party, but right now she's doing another major party. So at our next meeting, we're going to have more information about dates, which we believe is going to be in September, the earlier part of September, probably during our regular meeting time, where, what, and all that sort of stuff will be coming. Bill is working on swag, and we've given him some good ideas, and he's going to, and for the numbers and whatnot that will be needed. So he's going to, at the next meeting, bring us some costs, so we know what kind of cost for the swags. And then Jane has been working on a tagline, which is inspire, invest, and imagine. And those will be used in different applications used both in the toolkits and also to be written up in articles. And in the toolkits, she is going to be doing a letter along with Denora and Karen, helping to get the letters that will go out to our partners throughout the state in how they can help us parties. And then, John, we talked about the schools. Karen, can you talk to a little bit more about the school system, because you've got it on there?
Oh, okay, if you have something else to talk about, I pull that up.
Sure.
Awesome.
Can I just add one thing?
Yes.
I remember that Jane said, part of the tagline was 50 years of Wisconsin Arts Board investing in your community's imagination.
Right.
We thought that was really nice.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
I just want to point out as well that Paul Mankey, who is he's an alumna of Wisconsin Arts Board, did do this work pro bono. But it also shows the power of the former Arts Board members and why we're trying to get this committee of former Arts Board members
Yeah.
together so that we can continue to build and foster the relationship, even though their terms may have not been reappointed or that they have chosen to move on, that they remain critical members of the arts community and are hearing things, and if we can get them to be on some sort of committee from an alumnus section, I think it's important, and you just saw it in action.
Right. Right.
And I'll just add one more point. Tomorrow, I'm having lunch with Mary Alice Woodman. Mary Alice Woodman was on the board when I first started the Arts Board in the early '90s. However, she was on the Arts Board meetings.
Oh,
And so we're gonna have an opportunity to catch up with her and get some of the backstory on the early days of the Arts Board. So I'm looking forward to that. And whether we record it tomorrow or have another opportunity to have her sit for a recording, it'll be great.
Yeah.
Because we've unfortunately, Ruth Kohler was one of our original Arts Board chairs, and we've lost that opportunity. So we don't want to let those opportunities go by us.
So about the involving, our.
Your voice.
I would say thank you, John Johnson.
Yes.
For connecting us with Chris Gleason at the DPI, who is, again, his title is.
Use our arts and creativity education.
Department of Instruction for those.
Covers all of the different aspects, music, theater,
Fire
fine
guy.
art, et cetera.
Yeah, and so John kind of lit a fire, and it seems like it'd be easy to do that with Chris, who's a very creative guy himself. And so he proposed, just kind of in a brainstorming is my sense, this came out of a brainstorming with John and just thinking with others, 3 ideas. And the 50th anniversary task force seems to be gravitating toward idea number 2, which would cost about $5,000 is the estimate. And it is basically commissioning a composer in Wisconsin to write a work that can be performed by band, choir, and orchestra. The work will be made available to all Wisconsin schools and universities using DPI's and Chris's newsletter especially to really encourage, to really shine a light on the piece and encourage them to use it in creative ways. Recordings of the performances could be shared with us, placed on our website. At this point, it's sort of in brainstorming mode, but dance, theater, visual art, media art could be, those teachers could be encouraged to have their students riff off of that piece of music or be inspired by that piece of music to create more work that we could then share that could happen within their schools. And then, the idea is basically organize and consider the theme, commission a composer, and there's a composer that Chris has in mind because this is a pretty quick turnaround. If we want a piece that's ready by September, October, construct a mechanism to share the music with music ensembles throughout Wisconsin, develop materials to invite those other disciplines to participate, create some networks, all the things. So that's kind of
thank
what
you,
that,
Karen.
yeah.
So now what our task force needs is for the board to okay a $5,000 expenditure.
Is there a motion to approve this $5,000 expenditure?
Hoffman, so moved.
Is there a second? You want to say your name? Just so Garcia second, so just so you hear that, Jane. All right, is there any discussion?
Just to clarify, so the money will be for the commission, to commission the music.
Exactly.
Okay.
It's possible, I'm not super clear, but it's possible that that might also, there may be some of that also goes toward creating the collateral to help the teachers understand how to, not quite sure. But that's the, it's all around.
I think that's important, that other part, so that it doesn't just get lost, and end up in the music departments and I think that gets the other parts of the community too.
I feel certain that both Chris and John will make sure that doesn't just sit there, yeah.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Yeah,
okay.
that's good. I will ask for an extension. So, all right, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions?
Johnson.
Please record Johnson as an abstention. Jane, please.
Got it.
Thank you guys very much for your work. Anything else, Lynn?
No, just get your party hats ready.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. Okay, we'll move on to Karen Geschko, and this shouldn't be Karen's name. And at our last meeting, I asked if someone would volunteer to serve as the committee chair of the Access Committee, a wonderful committee. And no one has come forward. So following this meeting, if I don't get an email from someone by the end of this week, I will be using this wonderful power call. I'm appointing you as the chair of this committee. So if anybody wants to think seriously about it and get to me by the end of this week, otherwise Monday, one of you guys is getting a surprise email. So thank you very much. Karen, we'll have you do the report.
Okay, just a fun piece of information. We have funding from Arts Midwest to help us fund an accessibility audit. Gail, if I misspeak, please correct me. But basically, Jason from Access for Independence, which is a Madison-based organization. There are several around the state. But he is going to be coming in at the end of April and doing an accessibility audit of our space. This is something that we encourage arts organizations, cultural organizations, all organizations, the facilities to do. So this is really the first time, and certainly in our new space, that we will have an opportunity to have somebody come through and say, okay, this works, this doesn't. I mean, we're a state building, so we have to meet some basic, criteria from the beginning anyway. But I think that he will be able to share some good ideas and shed some light on some things that we haven't been thinking about. So that's exciting, and we will share the results of that with you all. And we'll take away any of the best practices, including his contact information, to share with others who are ready to do something like that in their space.
So what's wonderful about it is it grew out of the committee. The committee got us to this person. To be good partners, we let DOA know that we're doing this. And I think they thought we were trying to get them. And so why are you doing this? What's this about? And we said, look, this is about us understanding our space, not only for ourselves, but to understand how to do this with our constituents, right? What should we be looking for when we go into a space and say, hey, by the way, you might want to look at this thing. So I think they're a little happier now that they know that we're not going to say, you need to fix this. This is broken. And that's what I think they identify all the problems and things come for them. Not at all. So
They hastened to reassure us that they have some plans already in place to do some fixing of things. So that was. So that's it. Oh, just other than saying the access committee right now is, again, Dale, correct me if I misspeak, but about 5 people from the larger Madison community who had their expertise as they guide our work and suggest changes to our guidelines or clarifications or whatever. So it's a big group of people who aren't very demanding and are happy to be asked when asked for their opinion.
Do you hear that, future committee chair? Whoever you may be. I would much prefer someone by Friday communicate with me than to appoint someone. So, okay, moving on. Karen, still with you, approving the Wisconsin rebranding program recommendations, please.
Yeah, within your board materials, you'll see a memo from me that is basically the rebranding award list. And we tried to give you some context here. So we have and George, if you can share that, that would be awesome. We have our partners. Right now we have 12 rebranding partners around the state. And so before 2011, when we received the massive cut that we did, we have a sort of the base of what that organization used to get from us. Again, just for context, because we have told them ever since that date, when we have enough funding, we will plan to restore at least to that point, when we can. So the base of it since that time, however, is in the column to the right of that sort of colored column. Last year's award is in the next column. This year's request is in the next column. And then what we are able to recommend, giving the total in the pot, which is 116,700, is in that final column. I will note at the bottom there, the Northern Lake Center for the Arts, which has been a regranting partner from the beginning of this program, going through a major transition and has requested to sit out. That's why those numbers on the far right column don't really resemble any other numbers that you've seen in any of the other columns. So we'll keep you posted on that for sure.
Okay, if you guys all want to take a moment to look at those, if you have it in your packet, because we will go around the table and just make sure there are no conflicts of interest as we make recommendations on this vote.
And while you do that, I will also just take your point your attention to the next page here, which is I excerpted some quotes and comments from some of the applicants who just wanted to clarify to you all and to the world why these funds from us are important to their work, specifically in this program, but also beyond.
Karen, did you underscore what re-granting was about?
I did.
So would you say a word about that? Because folks who haven't heard about this program before.
Yeah, so the basic premise here is that we grant funds to 12 organizations at this point. At one point, there were more around the state who came to us early on and said, we would love to be able to make smaller grants, arts-related grants in our communities. And so we said, great, here's an amount, you need to match that amount with your own cash, at least, you can certainly overmatch it. And then as you give out the smaller grants within your communities, you need to use a panel process that is open and transparent. And that caused a couple of the community foundations that came in a little bit later, some pause. The Duluth Superior Community Foundation eventually left the program because they weren't comfortable with that piece. And they also just really wanted to focus on endowment building, you know, so we've had groups come and go in this program, but none have come in as new organizations since 2011, when the others were cut so much that until we're able to restore them to their pre-2011 levels, we're not accepting anymore.
So they get the grants of dollars in their community. And what's really interesting about that is in the beginning days, people thought, well, how can you give this to the local? What will they know? Right? Kind of goes down the food chain. The NEA thinks, what does the states know? The states think, what do the locals know? But in reality, what the locals know is what is important in their community. Yes. And so they're able to distribute these dollars to important arts events as they see fit in their community.
And one of the, you'll hear and you'll see in George's reports at the March meeting, this is always the board meeting that follows our trip up to the Chequamegon Bay area. And on a Monday night in January, every year for the last many years, we have gone up, Great Wisconsin has gone up, and we have been there as they celebrate at their annual meeting some of the grants that they have given in a sort of a showcase. And so the people who receive them come, it's a potluck, it's awesome, you're all invited, honestly, it's great, Lynn has come, thank you. But it's one of those moments where you celebrate the work that the locals do that you couldn't possibly do, because you don't know the community like they do, and it's fantastic, so it's great.
Wonderful. All right, did you guys all have an opportunity to look at that? All right, so we will go around and start with John.
Conflict with Milwaukee.
All right, give me just a moment.
Please make sure the person's name is stated loudly. Thanks.
Yes, I will. It's Milwaukee's Art Board.
Yeah.
Okay, Chela Garcia, it's the Milwaukee Arts Board conflict.
Thank you.
John? So these are perceived conflicts. Do you have any conflicts?
I was doing bifocals.
Yeah. Okay.
My wife was on that 15 years ago.
No,
No,
there's
no.
no perceived conflict.
Can't imagine that.
And I don't see Dana Arts here.
Nope.
Good, John? John, you okay? No conflicts? All right, John Potter?
Yeah, Potter, conflict with St. Croix Valley Foundation.
Got it.
Thanks. I just have to write it down as well. So when I call the vote. All right. Raphael?
Raphael Salas, no conflicts.
Thank you very much.
No conflicts.
Brian, no conflicts. Karen?
No conflict.
Matt?
No conflicts.
Denora?
No conflicts?
Glenn?
No conflicts?
Susan?
No conflicts.
Thank you. Mary?
No conflicts.
Jane?
No conflicts.
Okay, thank you. I believe that's everyone. Great, that's everyone. So
One clarification, Latino Arts receives funding from the Milwaukee Arts Board, is that true?
Are we looking at the organization, the regranting?
Yeah, the Milwaukee Arts Board is one of them. And if Latino Arts receives funding from the
For
Milwaukee.
Milwaukee Art Board, they do.
Okay, good. And I'm gonna put you down as just as a procedure.
Okay, thank you.
Wonderful. So then I would love a motion for all excluding the St. Croix Valley Foundation and the Milwaukee Arts Board.
Potter, so moved.
All right, so moved by Potter, seconded by Johnson. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Or abstain? Hearing none, motion passed. If I could please have
Let's use that door.
Denora and Chella, if you could please step out of the room. Stay close, so go fast. Karen, I'll let you back in. For those in the room, this is for perceived conflict of interest so that they're not with us. Okay, is there a motion to approve the recommendation for the Milwaukee Arts Board?
Richie, I'll make a motion.
Motion by Richie, second.
Second by Mitchell.
Second by Mitchell. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstentions? Hearing none, motion passes. Thank you, Denora and Chella. All right, is there a motion to approve the recommendation for the St. Croix Valley Foundation?
Hoffman.
Thank you, Karen. All right, and Charlie Garcia is seconding, so we have a motion to second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, no extensions, motion passes. Welcome John back into space.
Brian, can I raise something just real quick?
Absolutely.
Can we have, and this seems very procedural, but can we have a conversation about the necessity of having people leave the room during, and I understand why we do it, but can we have a conversation about the necessity of requiring people to leave the room? We've done it for years, and I've sort of always wondered why. I don't know that Robert's rules mandate it.
It's because if they're here and you're voting on their organization, the perception is they are influencing your vote.
Sure.
So the reason and at this point, this is tradition. This is not legal. This is arts board tradition, and it's actually becomes fun for people to get up and move out of the room. But the bottom line is, if they're sitting in the room, the perception would be that they're going to influence the outcome of my vote, and we don't want that perception.
And I guess from my perspective, it's a bit of a fiction that we're all engaged in. And people step outside the door and they can hear. We've done it on Zoom. People step outside the room. We all know it's a fiction. And so I'm wondering whether or not it's a procedure that we need to continue.
Karen, you had your hand first.
In the far distant past, and I think it's possible to consider it in the future as well. There have been at least one instance where there's been a real challenge between board members around a specific organization. And so to be able to have a frank conversation about what the concerns are when that board member associated with that organization is not in the room, it's easier. It's recorded, right? It didn't used to be recorded. It used to be recorded like this on pen and paper, and then you typed it up, and those were the minutes with no details. Now we have, it's all recorded, etc. But the feeling is, if there is something that is that tense, thankfully there hasn't been any in a long time, that there's a freedom to have your concerns expressed without that person sitting here with big body language, communicating that they, hate you. Which, is worst case scenario.
And I understand that, and I just, again, from my perspective, from my time here, it feels, well, certainly they have a right to be here. They don't have to leave. It's an open meeting. And So I just wanted to present that perspective and requiring people to leave it seems.
I think well. The arts board could make it mandatory policy. For board members to leave during that, but I'll just echo what Karen was talking about. I mean, you know, John Carter is not gonna lean over and hit me right now, but if exactly. But he had conflict with an organization and he had accused himself. But he stayed in the room and I wanted to have a discussion about the narrative and the grant and why are they actually getting it, et cetera. I could see that being problematic. So I don't know, I think it's,
Yeah,
I think it's a fine procedure. It does seem odd, it does seem awkward, especially in the era of Zooms and all this. But, and you can always watch it late at night and then, you know.
That
Plot your event, look at it down, yeah.
No, I think it's important you bring it up because it's something that has been of concern to me. So I think it's important to put it out there.
Does anybody want to have this conversation at a future meeting where it becomes an agenda item, or do we just appreciate your candidness?
Appreciate my candidacy, I suppose.
Thanks, Matt. And thanks for Karen and John, for what you shared. Okay, let's go back to the agenda. Just need to get back up there. So we are now in the approval of the Arts Challenge Initiative programs, and Karen.
Yeah, so this is kind of exciting. Actually, it's very exciting. We have had a number of groups in this grant program for a while. We have 3 original from the very beginning of the program, when in 2011 it shifted to a focus on organizations of color within communities of color. And then we've added slowly but surely over the years. And so you'll see in the background in the notes that we are now up to, is it 10? Oh my gosh, I'm looking at this for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 that we are recommending for funding this year. And so that's exciting. This is the biggest group that we had in this. And it's exciting for a number of reasons. We're really happy that now we have not 1, but 2 organizations outside of Milwaukee that fall into the eligible applicants and grantee category. And as a reminder, this is for organizations that are run by, for, and with people of color. That's the focus of their art form, and they are embedded within a community very specifically, and it's really kind of awesome. And it's actually a national model. I will put that out there. Yeah, so we have various amounts on the recommended column, simply because we cannot fund more than 25% of an organization's budget that's not fiscally responsible. So, and we have a couple that are really brand new and growing. So one of which actually was so brand new, Fate, Fashion, Art, and Teen Entertainment, that in the end we couldn't recommend them this year because they don't have a big enough budget yet for us to be able to give them our minimum grant in this program, which is $2,000. But next year they'll have it. They'll be in if all goes according to plan. And Art Start is noted as ineligible because this is for designed for organizations that produce, present, create art. And Art Start is an awesome organization that is more focused on helping young artists become professional. I'm describing this badly, the notes say it better, but they don't fit the criteria for being one of the recipients of this program. They have come to us in creative communities.
Art Start Milwaukee as opposed to.
Oh, yes, right. Art Start Milwaukee, not Art Start Rhinelander. Yeah, thank you. So yes, and they're also an interesting organization because they began in New York and then decided that they wanted to have a place in Milwaukee, which is awesome. And they even went so far as to also incorporate Milwaukee. Their board members are all New York based. So they're a good organization that does good work. They just don't do this. So.
Thank you for that explanation. All right, if you guys have had it.
Yes, I just would note that one of the reasons the budget committee needs to meet is because all that extra money in CNP, some of it might need to go here because we're growing the number of organizations in this category. Some of it could be considered in regranting if Karen's point before was either make the current communities whole or add communities to the mix. So that's part of the reason we need to meet together to see where those dollars should be allocated.
Perfect. Okay, everyone's had an opportunity to look at the recommended organizations, and so we will go around the room and I will have you guys let me know if there is a conflict or perceived conflict of interest. Sure.
Conflict with Walker's Point Center for the other.
Okay, Johnson,
None.
all right,
Potter, none.
thank you.
Solace, none.
Mitchell, none. Kelsey, none.
A Hoffman, Little Eagle Arts Foundation.
Matt?
Wallach, none.
Marcus, Latino Arts,
Okay,
Richie, none.
okay. All right, so we've got on the screens. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, Susan,
None.
thank you very much. Mary,
None.
Jane,
None.
thank you guys very much. Thank you for that. Okay, so someone willing to make a motion for the recommendation of these grant dollars, and we're going to exclude from this the Walker's Point, Little Eagles Art Foundation, and Latino Arts at this point in time, so it's all others.
Marcus, I move.
Marquez moves. Is there a second?
Potter, second.
Otter second. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Hearing none, motion passes. Chuck. We're gonna have you do the smoke and mirrors thing.
We couldn't hear anything out, by the way. Not in this building. No, but I hear you.
All right. So we want to make a motion for the Walker's Point.
Johnson.
Okay, motion by Johnson, second.
Richie.
I'm sorry,
Richie.
Richie, thank you very much. Lynn, second by Lynn. Jane?
Got it.
Oh, thank you. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No abstentions, hearing none, motion passes. And Karen Ann?
All right, even if it is an open meeting.
I know. All right, is there a motion to support the recommendation to fund Little Eagles Art Foundation?
Marcus.
Marquez, thank you very much.
Second, Garcia.
Second by Garcia. Any discussion? Hearing none, we have a motion on the table and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Hearing none, motion passes. Thank you.
It's starting to feel like a long time.
We should, it was Matt. It was Matt.
I like that about that.
Okay. Someone make a motion for the Latino Arts for the support.
I'll make a motion. Richie.
Richie, second. Mitchell. Okay, Mitchell, second. So we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Hearing none, motion passed. Thank you to Karen for this and yeah, the bailiff.
I know why we do this. It's like wait system.
Exactly. Thank you very much, Karen, and thank you for sharing the procedure behind it, as well as I think the testimonials we get from this are things that are wonderful for advocacy.
Yes,
So that people understand the impacts.
Yeah, so read on after that, quite cover letter for a little bit more.
Yeah, I really appreciate that because it helps me to know who I'm voting for.
Karen, I will say that back in the day, the board would get a book about this thick, and they would, each applicant for creative communities, CMP, would each have a paragraph that synopsized the panel discussion. And now it's like, hey, you can look at the
You
video.
could just, yes, yes,
Yeah.
but appreciate it.
All right, moving on, it's something we haven't done in a while. But we have the time, which is great, so if you have something that you want to share that's going on in your community, arts board related, or if you want to share a highlight or a low light in the conference, anything you want to share about any experience you've had here the past couple of days, now's the time, and we're going to start with teaching.
Let's see, there's so many things going on. But, you know, I welcome everyone to Walker's Point Center for the Arts. Right now, we have the Coalition of Photographic Arts exhibition on view through April 7th. We also have an upcoming arts education, what we're calling Youth Empowerment Week. This year's theme for our organization is everything is around collective care. So that's our theme for this year. So it's going to be focusing on environmental justice focus with making with the youth during spring break. And aside from what's happening in, you know, my building, there's also, I'm really excited to uplift the fact that Milwaukee is launching a Youth Poet Laureate program. Applications are due tomorrow, so if you know any juniors in high school in the Milwaukee area, please point them to Woodland Pattern, because it's going to be the inaugural Youth Poet Laureate. So really excited around what that program can really grow and become to nurture our young folks in the literary arts.
Very cool.
I can tell you that, there's a lot going on, in our school, the arts right now. That, because so much can be done in person now, you know, just visiting actually Verona High School, which has got a big new facility, absolutely gorgeous. They have an art gallery and it's in 6 or 7 different art rooms that they have there, all different kinds of media. They were just doing a play that they had done in their new theater. So that's one thing that you see. Some schools have so much, and we know that some schools don't. And so there's a real inequity around the state in terms of school funding, which demonstrates itself in all kinds of ways, especially in the arts. I can speak. I think there's some real rebound going on in the Madison area that probably Susan can talk about too, I think, in terms of arts offerings and some vitality going on. I think there's still kind of a question mark about downtown, what life after the pandemic, or as we shift out of pandemic mode, and workplaces have changed a lot. And so what does the impact look like on the arts when you have more people working remotely? And a lot of places are facing this. I'm going to a national meeting in DC next week where I read a lot about Washington DC is facing some real issues about businesses aren't there anymore.
Sad. It's scary. All right, well, thank you. John.
Shared this story with George the other day. So the ABC affiliate and television affiliate in the Twin Cities, KSCP, last Friday was doing Minnesota Live, it's a show, book show that they have, with the theme of the Oscars. And so they were looking at films made in Minnesota. And also the Minnesota Film Board is pitching the legislature that day. And they had the director on there. They also, for some odd, wonderful reason, decided to start the show with the 2 films that were recently made in Hudson. And so, that was, a very fine story, which my wife happened to tell us president of the Hudson Area Chamber of Commerce and Tourism Bureau. And she did just a great job of highlighting why this South Carolina film company would come thinking that they were going to do a Hallmark-like movie in the winter. So they did come in the winter 20 to do filming in November and December, but there was no snow. So they decided they would come back in January. By the time they came back in January, they had enjoyed what they'd done so much that they said, you know, we're gonna shoot another movie right now. And so they did their 2 Christmas movies then that year. So that's the way the segment started out. And then they said, oh yeah, there were films made in so too.
Thank you for that.
I prepared this time. But lots going on in the Ripon area and in the Fox Cities corridor on towards Milwaukee. The Pain Museum in Oshkosh is just opened to host an exhibit of paintings from the eminent Wisconsin painter Tom Utek, which is great that we can share those in this area because he's been sort of Milwaukee based for a long time. At the Museum of Wisconsin Art in West Bend continues to thrive under the direction of Lori Winters. And I was honored to be asked to guest curate an exhibit of 3 native artists, Guy Papinka, Chris Cornelius, and Tom Mantle this year. When the show went up, Scott Papinka got a call for his Genius Award from the Carter Foundation, so it was really exciting as well. I met Ann Katz and Drew Mischke for a public arts forum in Oshkosh in December. Drew was working on applying to create a public arts position, which I probably know a little bit less about than Ann, but it was an exciting proposal that he brought forward at that time. Town Square in Green Lake is hosting, has taken over the hosting of their art fair this summer, which is really great because that organization can probably hold up that event, which has been really popular in Green Lake, which is right next door to us. The Thelma Museum in Fond du Lac has just begun working with a new director who I don't know real well, but they are hosting the Wisconsin Visual Artists exhibit right now, which is really great. And their executive director, Allie Woodward, is one of the students, exciting for me. I saw a great concert at the Thrasher Opera House with Charlie Parr from the Loop, which was just an awesome show. And that organization, I believe, has been an awardee from the Wisconsin Arts Board as well over the years. And then finally, Karen and I are hoping to meet with Sam Luna, the director of the very new and scrappy Heist, which I would call an arts incubator in Ripon, but we'll find out more. So it's a little bit of what's going on there.
Well, I'm a little less prepared than that, but
You don't need to be that prepared.
I would say, we're actually seeing a lot of people coming out. We had a really vibrant opening last Friday for our annual show, The Drift, which is artist within 100 miles of Platteville and geared to anyone at any level, and every artist gets at least one piece in. This year, I think we had 37 artists, so we're on our 3rd year. Huge turnout at the reception, just a great crowd, there's probably 80 people there. We're doing that more regularly with a lot of our shows. That part's been encouraging. We'll be hosting Frank Juarez's Indiana Green Invitational coming up in June through August, so that's a pretty big show. I know he's reaching out, broadening his scope to Illinois and Minnesota and Iowa and Michigan as well. So we're hoping to have a group of Midwest artists. I don't know if he's bringing in yet, but I'm hoping he's going to bring in some artists who are not only from Wisconsin, but also from some other regions as well. So that's really exciting things coming up as well. I met with an artist from Baroqua who just came down to the gallery and was expressing like they just have tons and tons of artists in that area. And I was just saying, you know, we have lots of opportunities to show, so hopefully we're going to build a stronger connection with Baroqua, which is not that far from where we're at. But yeah, so the other thing is there's a small music venue called Three Springs Barns, just a privately owned, about 65 seat little old barn that hosts, some of the top, folk acts in the country, including Charlie Parr's done there before as well. Many things. They just start opening back up again. And they're just a donation based, whatever the door fee is, the company goes to the artists, and it's just a great place, and they're starting to see a lot more interest in people coming back. So I've heard, something that John expressed too, like numbers are down for theaters and that kind of thing. So we're seeing a pretty vibrant community, really wanting to engage in the arts. And I will say with our thrift show, we're seeing artists who never made art for the first time come in and say, I never did this before. How do I enter a show? And that part is really exciting because people are just making art and creating and realizing they have a space to show. And that's really helping to build our community. So it's all good stuff for us.
Thank you very much. In Door County, I think people always associate the arts primarily with the summer, and that's when a lot of the businesses are open. The theaters, 3 of the theaters operate primarily just in the summer and autumn. But there are goings on in the winter time as well, where the Sky Theater just hosted the Door County Film Festival, which took place a couple weeks ago. Third Avenue Playworks and Pencil Players Theater continue their winter play reading series. Our first one in February was full, 150 something people. Our second one happened to be with snow and went down to about 70 people. So the Door Community Auditorium, this is the time of year where they're able to do some wonderful, what they call their passport series. And so they had Stuff Africa come in, which is a dance troupe, and then they do a student matinee, and they've got a drummer and Reiki performer who's coming in, and it gives the students an opportunity to see things that they just would not be exposed to. Outside of that, I think a lot of the organizations are in the gear up phase right now, and the staffing and the planning and the pre-planning of marketing and getting everything going so that by the time the summer arrives, that we're ready truly for what is the high season. But the galleries, I know the Minnesota School of Art continues with their exhibits, and Nor Museum. I know staffing remains a challenge for many of the organizations in Door County. When some of you were on the board at the time when we toured Door County, and so you see that some of our like the players where we feed our company, the clearing, they feed people, Birch Creek, they feed the people who come in, and these are the employees and the students, etc. And it has become more and more challenging to get people to perform some of those ancillary things that you don't always understand are part of what makes what you see on stage happen. So, but we continue to work on that at Vince Players. We're continuing our housing campaign, and we will be ready to take occupancy mid-May. I think we're all crossing our fingers. We started ticket sales March 1st. Ours were about 20% higher than 2022's advanced sales. But in Door County, I keep looking over here because Callie is from Door County as well. We don't know what's going to happen until it happens. To be quite honest with you, it is the scary thing about producing theater in the woods, in a sense, is that until the show goes up, you don't know how many people are actually going to be in attendance. So we're really hoping for stronger audiences than we had last season all around, so that we continue to see that change. I wanted to point out for those of you who are just at lunch, it's a little bit different. That you looked at Lake Geneva's piece in the video that was shown. Did you see the arts ones? Did you see a single? They have a music festival there, a very well-known music festival. I was surprised that was included. It's the broader picture of making sure that.
And ice sculptures?
Yes, and ice sculptures, yes. World. So just, as I say, it's part of all of our responsibilities to raise some of those up and to make sure that the arts get the representation so that people understand that we are very much part of the tourism product. Off soapbox.
I think that's an excellent soapbox. Great job. Well, what I'm going to talk to you all about, including those folks up there, is that I really want to entice everybody as hard as they can try to come to the May 5-6 meeting in Stevens Point, Wisconsin, because I'm hoping to share with you guys in real life some of the things that are going on in central Wisconsin. And so there's an organization out of central Wisconsin called Create Portage County, and they've been involved for, I don't know, 3, 4, 5 years in an arts incubator, kind of a maker space, kind of a 3D printer. If you need it, you can use it. Kind of this ad hoc creative support space. Well, what they've been doing lately is working with an old convent and the convent ground. And they're reworking that beautiful facility into a major arts incubator and creative space. And I've spoken to the folks there. And although they may still be under construction, we think we can have our board meeting there. So that'll be pretty exciting. And at the very least, we'll get a tour of the grounds and the facilities. The other things that are happening at Stevens Point that I want you all to come and see is, you know, that for the last several years have been the gadfly around that native burial at UW Stevens Point. And finally, I'm just about sure that the installation of a mural acknowledging those dead is going to be finished. It's currently being painted. And I spoke with the Native Arts Director at the university this morning, and we are planning on an unveiling the weekend. So hopefully dates will align, but you know, those artists. And if that doesn't work out, there is also kind of a cool artist co-op on the main street in Stevens Point, the Q Gallery. And I think a co-op is an interesting way for artists to interact and support one another in a business sense. So they also have an opening night scheduled for our Friday night. So I want you all to come. I want you all to be there physically if you can. And if you can't, Create Portage County wants to know if we need to do a split like this. So, so you're all welcome. I'm looking forward to having all of us there.
And thanks for your patience and this meeting's can's been fixed so far because of the pandemic. So I'm so happy that you are being enthusiastic and excited.
I don't know. Yeah, it's gonna be great. It's gonna be great.
All right, Matt.
All right, I'll be brief. There's so much going on in Madison, as you can imagine. You know, something that had come up recently in a staff member actually brought it to my attention of one of my staff, is that there has been a dispute surrounding the restoration of a fountain in one of Madison's oldest, I think the oldest piece of public art in Madison, a fountain at Henry Villasu, which I believe is either situated on or between effigy mounds. And it's interesting because the debate that I've been hearing a lot of has been surrounding opportunity costs. And the cost to restore it would be nearly $500,000, between $150,000 and $500,000. Is that where we want to spend our money in restoring this piece that is very, very poor condition? And so interesting conversation taking place in Madison. Madison is always the center of all sorts of debates, and this was one that had come up recently. And because I know Brian is kicking himself saying, God, I wish I would have talked more about that $100 million. I just want to reiterate that number again and reiterate what Governor Evers told us, which is, oh, I wish it was more. That's really the perspective, because I have numerous people that I've talked to about this, and none of them are shocked by $100 million. And we're shocked initially, perhaps by it, because we're excited. You know, you all know me. I've given out $100 million in the past year on my team, you know, to different organizations, and it's nothing, right? I mean, $100 million is a lot of money, but also in the grand scheme of the budget, that money exists, and I want to just reiterate Brian's point that we shouldn't be intimidated by it. We should embrace it, and I like Governor Evers' philosophy that I wish it was more, and I think if we go in with that philosophy too, it will guide our talking points and our mentality as we advocate. So I'll pass it along on that note.
Thank you.
Thank you, but I really like what you just said. I appreciate that because that is so true that we're so used to getting so little that thinking 100 million is a big thing. It is a big thing. It's great. It's fabulous, but we do need to think bigger. You know, we are after all in our 50th position, so we want to make sure we get out of there. So thank you for that. So I'm going to start first with our organization. So at Latino Arts Strings, which is the part of Latino Arts that I direct, we're celebrating our 20th anniversary, which I'm really excited about. And I founded that part of the organization. I'm really, really happy about it. What it's done for us is that we're now mentoring and nurturing the future teachers and music leaders of our community. These are young people who are graduating with their degrees in music or music education, or coming back to teach with us and looking forward to teaching throughout the city and starting, you know, what I imagine to be part of our mission, which is a greater growth, like, you know, sort of a tree growth of heritage education in our community. Because I don't know if you're familiar with what we do, but heritage education is a big component. As immigrants, and I was an immigrant child, we find, you know, 0 to -0 information about who we are and what our cultural backgrounds are. And so this part is really exciting. And I see these young people coming forward, not just with their education as first generation graduates in college, but also understanding the importance of that side of what they're doing. So I'm really happy about that. Also at Latino Arts, we're celebrating women in our exhibits and our concerts. We had a sold out concert just on the 3rd. It sold out 2 weeks before the concert. My students were a big part of that concert. It was a great magical night. I wish I could have had you all there because you could have understood the scope of what we're doing. I would have loved to have shared that with you all. As you are becoming more and more important in my personal life and in my artistic life, I really would love to share something like that with you. But that said, we are celebrating our 20th anniversary at the Salasso Center on May 12th, the evening of May 12th. So if anybody's in town and would like to put that in, it'll be an early concert because it involves also children that are 0 to 5 years old, but also the rest of our program, which is about 200 young people on stage perform, which is really nice. But coming from a small arts organization, I also want to celebrate other organizations that I think are starting to do some really beautiful things, and I was really happy to see. For example, Proyecto Bembe as part of who we're funding, because they did start in our school setting, and I love what they're doing. It's in their own way, it's the same kind of message that I think we're trying to convey of heritage education through the arts, which is also, and here's my pulpit, it's also a really important aspect of social justice, you know, for the arts. So I'm really happy about that. Also, many of you may be familiar with the Black Triage Ensemble and the Black Diaspora Orchestra, David Hammond. I think that's something that has the potential of becoming something really strong. It's important in what it does and what it represents. It also, even though it says Black Diaspora, a lot of musicians of color are involved in these ensembles, including some of my graduates. Then there's another organization I'm excited about called Flutes at Dawn. I don't know if you're all familiar with it, right? Kiran Dadula is an Indian American musician, artist, hip hop and Indian and percussion artist. Who's doing really beautiful things with young people. And Panadanza, which is Carlise Kelly, and doing also amazing stuff with Panamanian and Caribbean and Afro-diasporic dance. It's really beautiful, the work that they're doing. And then last, I want to shout out, there's organizations that are combining. So this is another hat that I wear. I'm the chairperson for the Milwaukee Water Commons Board of Directors. And so water and the relationship, my take on working for the environment is more on the indigenous side of who I am. And so it's a relationship to our relatives. And so the Milwaukee Water Commons has that philosophy, so I'm really happy about that. So it's, I like the fact that it's an environmental agency working on environmental justice, but also taking a lot of artistic components. You know, they have an artist in residence that works with them, and every aspect of what they do is involved with the arts. And then as well, there's what is the Adams Garden Park organization, which is also it's an offshoot of the Walnut Way organization that was doing community development through gardening. They're also, these are two organizations that have had a lot of artistic elements in their work. And so there again, you know, just the work of the arts. I think who was it that said, was it you, Brian? I was having a conversation with about the arts. No, I was one of the board members, but the arts, you know, we don't want to make a huge, it was you, Phil, a huge carbon footprint, but we can make a difference in issues such as the environment. So that I put out on the shade with you. That's good. Good.
So every time I'm ready, we don't do it, we're too busy. So my quick notes are, the warehouse has been, which is a small arts education group in Eagle River, has been received a grant that they are using to reach out to seniors and going into senior housing and doing art with them. They are also, along with my group, Lola, Land O'Lakes Arts, are doing a lot more in larger groups of homeschooler art education. Ours has included ukulele. We were gifted 10 ukuleles. So to see the little tiny ones with ukuleles is wonderful. But anyway, that's been going really, really well. We have a new gallery, which actually George has the book on, which is the Roche Gallery. And the book has, it's been coming, it's got poetry, it's got photographs, and it's got articles about different artists. Actually, our program executive director was featured in this one. And she has been doing all sorts of wonderful things. She does not have a physical space yet. She needs this physical space, but she has not found it yet in the whole area. Anyway, she had a one-day seminar that a gentleman came in and talked about how you can make a living doing art, which is an interesting perspective. But it was a very, very interesting conversation. The people that were there it was so good. Plus, then I got to talk about the arts board. So, and then coming up is a 2-day writers workshop that I will be going to. I'm not staying overnight, but the 2 days I will be going. And I don't write. Let me tell you, if you saw my notes, you'd understand I am not a writer. But she always has such really, really good speakers at these that it's worth going to and just listening. So I will be going to both of those. And guess what I'm going to be talking about? And then we had the fortune to have 2 Bulgarian artists come up to our area. They actually both live in Chicago area now. One is an installation artist and the other was a visual artist. And part of Bulgarian art is a lot of needle work on their clothing and socks. Their socks are amazing. And these 2 women were so blown away by the arts that our little communities in the northern Wisconsin area have. They both are involved with the Chicago Art Institute and could not believe it. We are being written up. The Northwoods is being written up. I'll try to get them back we'll get over to cable. In the Bulgarian newspaper. They were at the music playground that we have that just was installed in Land O'Lakes and took pictures of them playing these musical instruments that we had to clean the snow off of. So we're going to be written up in Bulgarian for their newspaper in the Chicagoland area because they were so impressed that there's such a strong art community. So that's woo-hoo for us. And then Catherine Lang, I went up to an exhibit that she had, which I was going to talk about the last time. And it was places with two perspectives, and it's an absolutely beautiful book, which I didn't bring again. It's an absolutely beautiful book that has photographs that she and her partner took at the same place, but totally different perspectives of those places. And then she had a call to poets, and poets wrote poems and then performed them and as well as being in the book. Absolutely wonderful, really, really beautiful facility up there at the Historical Society in Washburn. Beautiful gallery, wonderful food. That's all I have.
Thank you. All right, now we'll go onto the screen. So Susan.
Oh, God. Madison's got all kinds of stuff, as most of you know. And the groups that I'm involved with would be Madison Opera just used Canopy Dance Company when they did Trouble in Tahiti and the Seven Deadly Sins.
Okay,
They
just did Trouble in Tahiti, they're
about
to do Figaro.
No, it's the wrong thing. All right. UW Opera had a problem with UW Opera, and it was kind of interesting because their baritone, the day before the last performance, got sick, and they had to fly somebody in, and I thought it was probably the most amazing job that this opera singer did. He had never had a rehearsal, and he had to walk onto stage and did a fantastic job. UW Opera is getting some spectacular work done, and it's pretty exciting to see because this is a university and it's just, students, and they are fabulous. David Ronas runs that program, and he's doing an amazing job.
La Traviata.
Yeah, and they just did La Traviata. And about a week and a half ago, there was the Forward Theater was part of the World Premiere Wisconsin, where the opening night was at 10 Chimneys, and Forward Theater was part of that. I was not able to go because I got sick. There is a newish theater. I think that they've actually applied for a grant and did not receive one, for Capital City Theater. Capital City is a professional theater. They're bringing in Broadway stars, and they just did Shining in Misery, which is a brand new musical. It's a Stephen King adaptation that was absolutely probably one of the funniest things I've ever seen in my life. It was music, amazing dancing, terrific music, and funny. I mean, laugh out loud, funny for the whole thing. And amazingly, I had never read Stephen King, so I had no idea what any of the stuff was referencing until I watched the movie the next day of Misery. And so I figured out what they were talking about. It was very, very good. Another thing that is happening is the Wisconsin Chamber Orchestra has the first time ever had a winter sellout. They have, in the 24 years that I've been on that board or involved with the Chamber Orchestra, they've never done a total sellout in the 1,200 seat house. And this time they actually had to raise or lower the stage halfway into the pit so that they could add 140 seats, and sold it out. This summer will be the 40th anniversary of Concerts on the Square. And with the 40th anniversary, we are doing the kickoff, and Jonathan and I are running the kickoff. So we have sold out. We sold out all of the seats 3 weeks in advance, which I was pretty excited about. And so 3 weeks in advance, we sold it out. We've got 300 and we were supposed to have 330. We have 349, plus there's a small waiting list as well. And then we tried to, shove more people into chairs that where people hadn't purchased whole tables. And it's pretty fun. We're just doing a lot of stuff, but do please join us this summer for Concerts on the Square. We get 40,000 people a year. I mean, a week for 6 weeks. And it's pretty damn cool to see.
Thank you, Susan. We're gonna run out of time and we've got our meeting scheduled. So we need to be out of the stream. So I'm gonna jump over to Jane and then we will get Mary. So Jane.
Okay, I will be brief. Well, what I really see happening in Kenosha right now is some great acceptance of younger people and getting more involved. Lemon Street Gallery was formed in 1999. That's a cooperative gallery that has been very involved in the community in a variety of ways. We're now just selected the 3rd director, and she's a young woman who graduated from UW Parkside just a couple of years ago. But what she is doing is bringing in some new ideas. Younger people are attending the monthly openings. She brought in a fundraising exhibit called Community, where artists who were not members of the cooperative were invited to bring pieces to the show. And they did, and they brought their friends. And it's just nice seeing that new life. I'm not seeing the same faces there anymore. They're there, but we have plenty of new people. And similar to what John had mentioned earlier about now the schools are getting to be back in business with some of their big performances. Music has always been extremely important in Kenosha. And we had the Orchestra Festival, Bandorama, and the Choral Festival so far. Each one of those ended up being on the only days that we have had winter weather, yet they had fabulous turnout. And I know one of the nights, I don't even know how anybody made it over to the major auditorium, but they did. And the visual arts exhibit opens at the Kenosha Public Museum in about a week. And again, that's all ages of Kenosha Unified. So that's what I have.
Thank you very much, Mary.
Excellent. I just want to add that I've been seeing so much changing of the passing of the torch in terms of leadership in arts organizations across Milwaukee. Been doing some work again with UPAF and just talking with Pat Rath and what he's seeing. There's an interest in getting back to arts performances and live performances, but at the same time, this leadership change is going on. New arts direction at the Florentine, at the Art Museum, Imagine MKE, on the administrative side. And the most excitingly, Bronzeville Center for the Arts is coming up, and really representative of greater access to the arts, Black arts across Milwaukee, which is going to be very exciting. And what we're hoping that it signals is even better partnerships with area arts groups within public schools, a lot of which are still kind of hard to get into, hard to partner with. So that's kind of what we're looking at for the future.
Thank you very much, Mary. Okay, we are going to jump into old business. The chair report I have, I know George is going to speak a little bit about World Premier Wisconsin. We had a presentation by Jen at our September meeting. We've talked about it in other meetings. The other thing is we've been talking about the 100 million and the other funds that were put in to try to make us our budget full, but the governor also put in his capital budget funding for Bronzeville, as well as Peninsula Players Theater for projects that we have going on. So it was nice to see funding going beyond that and going into the state building commission's plan, something else for the National Railroad Museum in Green Bay. So they're it was nice to see where some of this funds were being, included in the governor's budget. So I'll pass it to Richard for a wrap up of the meeting.
So, Susan, we were at the World Premier Wisconsin kickoff. And it was quite amazing. There were performances, but just that energy that is very typically Wisconsin. We're gonna do this thing. We don't have any money, we don't know what we're doing, but we're gonna go do this thing. And so we're in the midst of it. By June 30th, it will be over, but there are performances happening all throughout the state. We were provided with an opportunity. We had 2 grants that were not collected. And so we proposed to the executive committee with 1 abstention.
And I didn't attend either because of the abstention. Right.
And so, but just the idea that they are having a playwrights symposium. And so Wisconsin playwrights will get to interact with a nationally recognized playwright and have a chance to not only do that, but network with one another. And they needed some money for that. And so we had a grant return of $3,900. And so with the executive committee's blessing, we offered that to them. So we will have sponsored that playwrights symposium. And so we're glad for that. As we mentioned to the committee at the time, you know, one of the reasons we were able to do that is obviously money came back. Secondly, it's so far away from when money was granted, we couldn't just go down the list and go to the next one. And third, we have this opportunity as a sort of a support of the field. And so it's an opportunity that really aligns with the great communities for it. So we're really proud of that. Let's just look at the list of things I have for myself to tell you about. The Arts Midwest update is simply that Arts Midwest is still chugging along. We will be meeting in South Dakota this as the Arts Midwest Board, but more importantly to this organization is that the Arts Midwest executive directors of the state arts agencies at the end of May will be meeting in Washington, D.C. So the 9 states are coming together, not only to go visit the NEA, which of course you would expect to do, but they're setting up meetings with other federal agencies so that we can tap into resources that are not just the NEA. So in a survey of our large field of our 9 states, the 3 entities they want to see is Department of Agriculture, Rural Development, the Department of Commerce and their Economic Development Organization, and the Department of Health and Human Services. And so we'll hopefully get to see somebody from all of those talk about what they're thinking about doing and how the 9 in the region can respond to that. And so Arts Midwest has taken a proactive role in hiring a firm in Washington to set up those meetings. So bringing value back to the region, which I think is really important. Brian mentioned before, Arts Economic Prosperity will be done in November. We'll have that. The National Arts Action Summit, unfortunately, is no longer live in person in DC, as we still wait for Americans for the Arts to sort out its role as the nation's advocate. We talked about the Poetry Out Loud earlier on, so I'm going to say that again. I will mention the Science Festival. So the Science Festival will be October 16th through the 22nd this year. And as always, welcomes not only attendance, not only in Madison, but across the state, and also offers the opportunity for organizations to do arts-related activity that talks about the sciences, or vice versa, science activity that talks about the art and humanity. The last thing I will say, this meeting is so very important. It's so important that you took the time to be here, because the people who attend this conference see all your faces and say the arts board is live and on. Oh, I didn't know there was an arts board. Oh, you're on the arts board. What does that mean? So to date, we've heard from, you've probably heard from others. We've heard from Pond du Lac who said, we want to do more arts. We want to talk to you about that. We've heard from Green Bay who said the same thing. We want to do more arts. Our world is changing. We want to be able to do that. We heard from the Mulva Center in Pier who said, we're getting close. We're almost built. We're going to need to come talk to you. Headwaters Council for the Arts in Eagle River, which we haven't heard from in years. the grant maker is here, and she says, oh boy, we need to talk to you, and Brian was explaining to her when the deadlines were, et cetera.
We were stopped after George and I got stopped twice trying to get down to this meeting.
And then finally, the Kenosha folks learned that they were putting together a plan for a large theater. And I said, was it the Kenosha Theater? They said, no, it would have been out by the interstate. It was by a developer and it fell through, but now they're still thinking about, will they do it? Won't they? You know, and so it's important for them to all understand that the art board is alive and well and can help them when they start thinking through these processes. So really important that you're here next year at Lake Geneva, to bring your shoes, your very most comfortable shoes, because it's a hike from one end of that building.
It's not an ADA friendly property.
But having said that, I'm just gonna echo Karen and say, we see you in May. And hopefully we will see you physically in May in central Wisconsin. And I hope, besides the audio issues, I hope we're getting closer to figuring out this owl thing and making sure that you're all connected in. I think the one challenge we faced today, and thankfully we recorded this meeting, but we couldn't get it to live stream. And so part of the challenge is having all the technology falling in one place as we're trying to operate the meeting at the same time. So let's look forward to May and
Yeah.
May 5th and 6th.
May 5th and 6th.
See.
All right, is there any new business anyone wants to bring? Hearing none, is there a motion to adjourn?
Marcus motion.
Okay, Marquez makes a motion, Lip seconds. This meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much, everyone.
And unlike his pilot, Brian landed the plane.